It was just another Monday at Ironclad Fitness when everything changed. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I pushed through my usual chest day routine, the familiar scent of disinfectant and sweat hanging in the air. I've been coming to this gym for nearly 2 years now, following the same predictable patterns, nodding to the same familiar faces. That's when I first noticed him, Ethan Mitchell, the new trainer who'd just been hired. Standing at about 6'2" with broad shoulders and dark curly hair that fell just above his eyes, he moved through the gym with a quiet confidence that immediately caught my attention. I'm Alex, by the way. Alex Mercer. 32, graphic designer by day, and someone who'd always viewed the gym as nothing more than a necessary evil to keep my body from completely surrendering to my desk job. As I watched Ethan introduce himself to the other trainers, I couldn't help but notice how his smile transformed his entire face, creating small creases around his eyes that suggested he laughed often. There was something refreshing about him in this space that was typically filled with serious faces and grunting. Little did I know that this new trainer would completely transform not just my fitness routine, but my entire perspective on connection and intimacy. The gym has always been an interesting social experiment, a place where strangers share space, sweat, and occasionally brief conversations about proper form or how many sets they have left. But it's rarely a place where people truly connect. At least, that's what I always thought until Ethan arrived and challenged everything I believed about physical spaces and emotional boundaries. Ethan's first day at Ironclad created quite a stir among the regular members. I observed from the safety of the free weights section as he was introduced to the morning crowd. Unlike the other trainers who typically wore the standard-issue polo shirts with the gym logo, Ethan had opted for a fitted athletic shirt that showcased the results of whatever training philosophy he followed. His approach seemed different from the start, less about intimidation and more about accessibility. While most trainers at Ironclad maintained a certain professional distance, Ethan immediately engaged with members, kneeling down to make eye contact when explaining exercises, placing a gentle hand on shoulders to correct form. I found myself watching him more than focusing on my own workout, curious about this new presence that seemed to brighten the usually monotonous gym environment. When our eyes met briefly across the floor, I quickly looked away, pretending to be deeply invested in adjusting the weight on my barbell. But I could feel a strange flutter in my chest that had nothing to do with my elevated heart rate from exercise. It wasn't until my third workout that week that Ethan approached me directly. I was struggling with a shoulder stretch, wincing as I tried to release the tension that had built up from hunching over my computer all day. "You're fighting against your own body," he said, his voice closer than I expected. I turned to find him standing beside my bench, his expression thoughtful rather than judgmental. "Mind if I show you a more effective approach?" I nodded, not trusting my voice in that moment. What followed was my introduction to Ethan's unique philosophy on stretching, one that would eventually lead us down an unexpected path. Most people think stretching is just about pushing through discomfort, Ethan explained as he demonstrated a modified version of the stretch I'd been attempting. But it's actually about creating a dialogue with your muscles, listening to what they're telling you. His hands moved as he spoke, illustrating invisible connections between different muscle groups. And the most effective way to communicate with muscle tissue is through direct contact, skin to skin. I raised an eyebrow, not entirely sure what he meant. Noticing my confusion, Ethan chuckled. "I know it sounds a bit unorthodox, but there's science behind it. Your skin is your largest organ, and it's incredibly responsive to temperature, pressure, and touch. When I'm helping clients with deep stretches, I've found that direct contact allows me to better feel the tension patterns and helps the client's muscles respond more readily to guidance." There was something in the way he explained his approach, passionate but not pushy, that made me curious rather than skeptical. When he offered to schedule a proper stretching session to help with my chronic shoulder tension, I found myself agreeing before I'd fully thought it through. Our first official stretching session was scheduled for Thursday evening, just before closing time when the gym would be quieter. I arrived feeling a mixture of anticipation and nervousness that I attributed to trying something new. Ethan greeted me with that same warm smile that seemed to be his signature, leading me to a quieter corner of the gym where he had already set up a mat. "We'll start with some basic movements to warm up the tissue," he explained, guiding me through gentle arm circles and neck rotations. "The goal is to create heat in the body before we ask it to open up." As we moved into the actual stretching routine, I began to understand what Ethan had meant about skin-to-skin contact. Unlike other trainers who might briefly touch a client's shoulder or back to indicate proper positioning, Ethan's approach was more comprehensive. For a chest stretch, he positioned himself behind me, his bare forearm making contact with my upper back as he gently guided my arms into extension. Feel how your chest is opening? He asked, his voice close to my ear. The heat from my arm is helping your tissues soften. Our bodies respond differently to human touch than to fabric or tools. I had to admit, there was something remarkably effective about his method. Stretches that had always been uncomfortable were suddenly accessible, and I could feel tension melting away in places I hadn't even realized were tight. But along with this physical release came an unexpected awareness of Ethan as a person, the steady rhythm of his breathing, the subtle scent of his skin that wasn't quite cologne but something more natural, the careful strength in his hands as they supported my movements. Over the next few weeks, our stretching sessions became a regular part of my gym routine. Twice a week, usually near closing time when the gym was less crowded, Ethan would guide me through increasingly complex stretching sequences. Each session seemed to deepen not just my physical flexibility, but also the unspoken connection between us. I found myself looking forward to these sessions with an intensity that surprised me, counting the hours on stretching days, arriving early and lingering afterward. Other gym members began to notice. Marcus, a regular who usually worked out at the same time as me, raised his eyebrows suggestively one day as Ethan walked away after confirming our next session. "That's some special attention you're getting from the new guy," he commented, a knowing smirk playing at his lips. I felt my face grow warm. "It's just stretching," I replied, the defensiveness in my tone betraying me. "I have chronic shoulder issues from sitting at a desk all day." Marcus just laughed. "Sure, man. Stretching. That's what they're calling it these days." His comment stayed with me, forcing me to confront the growing tension I'd been trying to ignore. Was there something more to these sessions? Was I imagining the way Ethan's hands sometimes lingered longer than necessary, or how our conversations had gradually extended beyond fitness to more personal territories? I learned about his previous work at a physical therapy clinic in Seattle, his passion for rock climbing, and his recent decision to move across the country for a fresh start after ending a long-term relationship. In turn, I'd shared more about myself than I typically would with someone I'd known for such a short time. My frustrations with my creative block at work, my strained relationship with my parents who still couldn't accept my sexuality, my love for obscure documentary films. The internal conflict grew stronger as our sessions continued. I found myself becoming hyper-aware of every touch, every shared laugh, every moment our eyes met. Was this just a professional relationship with friendly overtones? Was I projecting my attraction onto innocent interactions? The uncertainty was both thrilling and torturous. Everything changed on a rainy Friday evening in late October. The gym had been unusually quiet, with most regular members opting to start their weekends early rather than brave the downpour. My stretching session with Ethan had been particularly intense, focusing on hip openers that left me feeling both physically vulnerable and emotionally raw. There's something about releasing tension in the hips that seems to unlock stored emotions, a phenomenon Ethan had warned me about at the beginning of our session. "The hips are where we hold a lot of our stress and unexpressed feelings," he'd explained as he helped me settle into a deep lunge. "Don't be surprised if you feel emotional afterward. It's completely normal." Normal or not, I wasn't prepared for the wave of feelings that washed over me as we completed the final stretches. As I sat on the mat, feeling strangely empty and full at the same time, the overhead announcement indicated that the gym would be closing in 15 minutes. "Perfect timing," Ethan said, offering his hand to help me up from the mat. "How are you feeling?" "Open," I replied honestly, surprised by the slight catch in my voice. And a little disoriented, to be honest. Concern flickered across his face. "That's not uncommon after deep hip work. Why don't you take a few minutes in the locker room to center yourself before heading out? That rain looks pretty intense anyway." He gestured toward the floor-to-ceiling windows where water streamed down in sheets, distorting the view of the parking lot beyond. I nodded gratefully and headed to the locker room, splashing cold water on my face and trying to make sense of the emotional turbulence I was experiencing. By the time I emerged, the gym had emptied except for the staff doing their closing routines. I was surprised to see Ethan still there, now changed from his work clothes into jeans and a simple gray t-shirt, his gym bag slung over his shoulder. "Feel better?" he asked, his eyes searching my face with genuine concern. "Much," I assured him. "Thanks for waiting. You didn't have to do that." He shrugged, a small smile playing at his lips. "I wanted to make sure you were okay. Plus," he added, glancing toward the windows, "I'm not exactly looking forward to getting drenched." We stood there for a moment, the silence between us charged with unspoken thoughts. The last staff member called out that they were locking up, asking if we were heading out. Ethan looked at me questioningly. "I was thinking of waiting out the worst of the rain," I said. "There's a coffee shop around the corner that's open late." Mind if I join you? He asked, and something in his tone made my heart beat faster. The rain pounded against the pavement as we made a dash for the coffee shop, arriving breathless and laughing despite being soaked. The small space was warm and dimly lit, nearly empty save for a couple of students with laptops and a barista who looked bored. We found a table in the corner, ordered hot drinks, and suddenly found ourselves in a context completely removed from our usual gym environment. Without the backdrop of fitness equipment and other members, something shifted between us. Our conversation flowed easily from topic to topic, but there was a new undercurrent of tension, the good kind that makes you hyper-aware of every gesture, every smile, every accidental brush of hands across the table. "Can I ask you something?" Ethan said after a momentary lull in conversation. "And feel free to tell me if I'm overstepping." I nodded, my mouth suddenly dry despite the hot chocolate I've been sipping. "These stretching sessions we've been doing," he began, his fingers tracing patterns on the wooden table. "They felt different to me. Special, somehow." He looked up, his eyes meeting mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. "I'm wondering if you felt it too, or if I'm just imagining things." The moment stretched between us, filled with possibility. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest as I considered how to respond. The safe answer would be to deflect, to maintain the professional boundary between trainer and client. But something about the vulnerability in his expression, the way he had put himself out there, made me brave. "I felt it," I admitted quietly. "Every time." His expression softened with relief and something else, anticipation, perhaps. "I've never crossed lines with a client before," he said. "It's important you know that. But with you." He paused, searching for words. "With you, it's been hard to remember why those lines exist in the first place." The coffee shop around us seemed to fade away as we navigated this new territory together. Ethan explained that he'd been drawn to me from his first day at the gym, noticing how I moved with a kind of unself-conscious grace that was rare in a space where most people were hyper-aware of their bodies. I confessed that I'd been watching him too, admiring not just his physical presence but the kindness he showed to everyone, from the elderly members to the cleaning staff. "So what happens now?" I asked eventually, aware that we were approaching closing time at the coffee shop as well. Ethan considered the question thoughtfully. "Now we acknowledge that there's something here worth exploring," he said. "But we also respect the professional context where we met. I think." He hesitated. "I think it might be best if I'm not officially your trainer anymore." I felt a pang of disappointment, which must have shown on my face because he quickly reached across the table, his fingers brushing against mine. "Not because I don't want to spend time with you," he clarified, "but because I want to spend time with you without those boundaries and ethical considerations. I want to be able to take you to dinner, to learn about you outside the gym context, too." He trailed off, a slight flush coloring his cheeks. "To what?" I prompted, unable to help the smile that was spreading across my face. "To see if what I'm feeling could grow into something real," he finished. "Something beyond the gym walls." The rain had slowed to a gentle patter by the time we left the coffee shop. Standing under the awning, neither of us seemed eager to end the evening. When Ethan suggested walking me to my car, I agreed despite the fact that it would take him out of his way. We moved slowly through the damp streets, our shoulders occasionally brushing, the space between us charged with new awareness. When we reached my car, I turned to face him, suddenly shy despite the hours of conversation we just shared. "I had a really good time tonight," I said, wincing internally at how inadequate the words sounded. Ethan smiled, stepping slightly closer. "Me too." And I meant what I said inside. "I'd like to see you again, properly, not just at the gym." "I'd like that," I replied, my voice softer than I intended. There was a moment of hesitation, both of us aware of the precipice we stood on. Then, with a gentleness that echoed his approach to stretching, Ethan reached up to brush a raindrop from my cheek. His hand lingered, warm against my skin, and I found myself leaning into his touch. "Is this okay?" he murmured, his eyes searching mine for confirmation. In answer, I closed the small distance between us, pressing my lips to his in a kiss that started tentative but quickly deepened with shared certainty. His arms encircled me, pulling me closer, and I marveled at how natural it felt, this connection that had been building through weeks of physical dialogue through stretching now transforming into a different kind of conversation altogether. When we finally pulled apart, both slightly breathless, Ethan rested his forehead against mine. "I've been wanting to do that since I corrected your shoulder press form that first week," he admitted with a small laugh. "I wish you had," I replied, surprising myself with my boldness. We could have saved a lot of time. The weeks that followed brought a new rhythm to our lives. True to his word, Ethan arranged for another trainer to take over my official sessions, though he occasionally couldn't resist offering tips when he saw me working out. Our relationship outside the gym blossomed quickly, built on the foundation of trust and physical awareness that our stretching sessions had established. It turned out that Ethan's philosophy about skin-to-skin contact extended far beyond stretching techniques. He approached all aspects of life with the same belief in the power of direct connection, whether cooking dinner together with our hands covered in the same spices, walking with our fingers intertwined, or the increasingly intimate ways we discovered each other's bodies away from the public eye of the gym. 3 months after that rainy night, as we lay tangled together in the early morning light of my bedroom, I found myself reflecting on the unexpected journey that had brought us together. "What are you thinking about?" Ethan asked, his voice still rough with sleep as he traced patterns on my bare shoulder. "About your stretching philosophy," I replied, turning to face him. "About how you were right. Some things really do work best skin to skin." His laugh rumbled through his chest against mine, a sensation I'd grown to love. "Are you saying my professional techniques were actually just elaborate flirting?" "Maybe," I teased, pressing a kiss to his jaw. "Or maybe you genuinely believed in the method, and the attraction was just a happy side effect." He considered this, his expression growing more serious. "The method is real," he said. "The science behind touch and its effects on muscle tissue is well documented. But—" He paused, his eyes meeting mine with the same intensity that still made my heart race. "I can't deny that from the first time I guided you through a stretch, there was something different. Something special about the way we connected. The gym remained a part of our routine, though now we sometimes arrived and left together, no longer hiding the nature of our relationship. Some members were surprised, others claimed they'd seen it coming from miles away. Marcus, in particular, never missed an opportunity to remind me that he'd called it from the beginning. What had started as a simple stretching philosophy had evolved into something far more profound, a reminder that sometimes the most unexpected connections can lead to the deepest forms of intimacy. Ethan had taught me that true connection requires vulnerability, the willingness to let someone else guide you into uncomfortable positions, trusting that the temporary discomfort will lead to greater flexibility, greater strength, greater capacity for joy. As I watch him now, demonstrating proper form to a new gym member with the same patience and attention he showed me all those months ago, I'm struck by how something as simple as a training session could change the course of 2 lives. His eyes catch mine across the gym floor, and the smile that spreads across his face still creates those same creases around his eyes that I noticed on his very first day. Love finds us in the most unexpected places, sometimes under fluorescent lights, sometimes in the guidance of a hand on skin, sometimes in the vulnerable space of learning to stretch beyond our comfortable limits. Ethan and I found it in all these places, proving that sometimes the most effective connections really do happen skin to skin, heart to heart, when we're brave enough to let someone else show us a better way to move through the world. Total_char_count, 18,736.